Chapter 164. The War. Summer, 1979. Lily and James's wedding was set for late September. It was going to be a relatively small affair, order members and school friends mostly, and it would be held at the Potters' estate. They were hoping the weather would be nice enough to have it in the gardens, but even if it rained, there was plenty of room indoors. After making such a fuss on the night of Remus's homecoming, Sirius was clearly very embarrassed by how he'd acted, and made up for it by doing pretty much anything James and Lily asked of him. He ordered dress robes for the boys in Madame Malkin's, went to pick up the rings from the jeweller, and offered his entire record collection up for use at the reception. Remus, who had never been to a wedding, tried to stay well back. As far as he knew, his duty as a groomsman was to show up, keep Sirius's head from exploding, and make sure none of Lily's muggle family saw anything too scarring. Sirius's most bonkers act of contrition was to handwrite all of the invitations. His talent for calligraphy was still one of Sirius's darkest secrets, and Remus's favourite thing to tease him about. But he was determined to be the perfect best man, so he sat hunched over the dining table one afternoon and worked at it for a solid 4 hours. 58! Sirius said triumphantly, finishing the last invitation with a flourish of his quill. Well done, Remus said, glancing over the top of his newspaper. Ah, look at your pretty handwriting. So dainty. It's better than your chicken scratch. Sirius poked his tongue out. Just don't tell anyone you did them, Remus advised, or you'll start getting requests. Do you really think they're that good? Sirius asked, holding one up to the light to inspect the delicate whirls of black ink. They're gorgeous, really, Remus said fondly. Well, it is the only time I'm doing it, Sirius sniffed, tidying up the pile. This is the one and only wedding I will ever support. What if Mary got married? Or Pete? I'd show up and get drunk, but secretly I would hate every minute. Very reasonable, Remus nodded. Another thing you can blame the noble and most ancient house of Cack for, Sirius said. Do you know how many engagement dinners and weddings I've been to? Ugh! He shuddered visibly. So, I'm sorry, Moony. You'll never make an honest man of me. Oh, and I was just about to propose, Remus said dryly, getting up. Tea? Please, Sirius nodded, rubbing his sore knuckles. Remus entered the kitchen, tapping the kettle with his wand. They'd gone to get it the same day as the dress robes. It had reminded Remus a bit of going to get his school shoes as a boy. Ollivander measured him and then hummed and ahed and muttered to himself under his breath. He'd rummaged about in the stockroom and brought out box after box of wands for Remus to try. Eventually, they'd settled on a flexible cypress number with a unicorn hair core. He'd been trying to get used to it. It wasn't the same as Lyle's wand, which he'd found out had been blackthorn with kelpie hair core. It seemed less rigid, more inclined to do what Remus told it, which meant that Remus had to remember not to put too much force behind his magic, as he'd grown used to doing. He watched the steam rising from the kettle sprout thoughtfully. It would really piss them off, though, Remus called through the thin wall. What? Who? Your family, Remus said, plonking 2 tea bags into 2 mugs. If you married a bloke, a half-blood werewolf bloke. Don't forget Paul, Sirius laughed. Merlin, just imagine sending my mother an invitation to that. Imagine sending anyone an invitation to that, Remus snorted. Christ, I can already hear James making horrible puns about the honeymoon. He carried the mugs of tea back through the living room, setting them down on the coffee table. I've been engaged once. I really don't fancy doing it again, Sirius said, with an air of finality. Oh yeah, you're welcome for that, Remus winked.
Well, if I had a nickel, I'd find a game. If I won $1, I'd make it rain. If it rained an ocean, I'd drink it dry. Lay me down dissatisfied. Legs to walk and thoughts to fly. eyes to laugh and lips to cry, a restless tongue to classify, all born to grow and grown to die.
The wedding planning was actually a very welcome distraction, as the summer opened up before them. Sirius, James, Peter and Lily were often called out urgently for order missions, and the list of missing read out at the beginning of every meeting was growing longer. Benji Fenwick, who had been working with Moody for years, was horribly murdered. They couldn't even have a casket at his funeral. There wasn't enough of him left. Darius Barebones, who Remus had never liked, but who was nonetheless a dedicated agent, was found flayed alive in his own office at the ministry. They were miserable times. Remus was finally allowed to return to the Order officially after 2 full moons had passed without incident. Ferox believed that the split Castor instigated meant that Greyback's pack was too weak to be much use to Voldemort, and somehow everyone had got the idea that Remus was responsible for this. Dumbledore actually shook his hand, saying, "You've done us all proud, Mr. Lupin." Danny McKinnon had even apologised to him. Remus thought that was probably Marlene's doing. By July, the Order's numbers had dwindled so much that even Remus was getting sent out, and he was often paired with Mary, which made things bearable. Their general orders were to back up Aurors by standing guard or managing surveillance on some of the better-known Death Eaters. Remus and Mary spent a lot of their time sitting in cafes together, or hiding behind bushes. One such mission involved following a Death Eater called Travers, who was known to drink at a wizard's pub near Stoke Mandeville. They were just supposed to see where he went, how he spent an average day. Caradoc Dearborn, a hero of the Order of the Phoenix, had last been seen entering the pub, but no one had heard from him since. "You came back," Mary whispered as they waited in the back seat of an ancient Ford Cortina parked across the road. "So maybe Caradoc will too." "I hope so," Remus replied. "I just can't bear not knowing." Mary's leg was shaking nervously. "I keep imagining. And what they did to the Pruitts." "Don't think about it." He put a hand on her knee to keep her still and searched for a distraction. "Hey, did Lily decide on flowers in the end?" "Anything except lilies and petunias," Mary said with a grateful smile. "Me and Miles are wearing lavender, so whatever goes with that." Sounds nice." Remus nodded, though he couldn't for the life of him picture the colour lavender. Was it purple or blue? "I'm so glad you're here with me, Remus," Mary said. "I could only ever get my defensive spells right in your study groups." "We're here to watch. Everything will be all right." They waited for hours, and when Travers finally came out, staggering and reeking of spirits, he was not alone. Remus had to nudge Mary, who'd nodded off, lolling against his shoulder. "Oh shit," she whispered, her voice hoarse with terror. "6 of them, Remus." Remus held a finger to his lips, signalling her to be quiet. He watched the Death Eaters spill out of the pub into the quiet country road. He recognised a few of them from pictures Moody had shown the Order. Karakoff, Dolohov, and Electo Caro. 2 of them he recognised by scent. "Fuck," he said under his breath. "It's Mulciber and Snape." "No." Mary grabbed his arm, peering to look. "Oh my god, we've got to get out of here." The problem was, the car was just for show, and anyway, neither of them could drive. "Stay calm," Remus said. "We'll just wait for them to go. I bet they're going to Ooh, muggles!" Electo Caro, a stocky, horsey-faced young woman, pointed gleefully at the Cortina. "Let's play!" "Fuck," Remus said again. The 6 dark-robed wizards glided towards them, drawing their wands. Remus pulled his out too, Mary following suit. "Quick," he said. "Let's get out. Maybe we can—" "Aperio!" Travers whipped his wand at the car, and the doors ripped away, wrenching from their hinges with a horrible crunching metal sound. Mary screamed, but she kept her wand up. Remus pushed her backwards, shielding her with his body and hoping they would get out the other side. He'd feel much better with a car between them and the 6 dangerous killers. "They're not muggles," one of the Death Eaters said gleefully. Was it Mulciber? "They're mudbloods." "Ha! Even better," Alberto cackled. "Impedimenta!" Remus yelled as he and Mary got free of the car. "Loony Lupin, is that you?" Snape now. "What luck. Sectum..." Mary cried with so much emotion that Remus heard the click as Snape's teeth snapped shut from her curse. He clutched his jaw with both hands, unable to speak. "Crucio!" Mulciber shouted, aiming at Mary, but Remus jumped in quickly with a shielding charm. "Stupefy!" Mary got Mulciber, but the others were still advancing, even Snape, though he was disabled. "Quick, Mary!" Remus grabbed her hand, and they disapparated, landing just about on their feet in the middle of Cardiff town centre. Luckily it was so late that there were no muggles about, except for some very drunk-looking tramp who rubbed his eyes at the sight of them. "Where are we?" Mary asked shakily, her eyes huge. "It doesn't matter," Remus panted. "We need to do it again. 6 times to be safe, remember?" "Oh, right. Yes, okay." She nodded, clearly in shock. Remus realised he'd have to do it again. He squeezed her hands once more, and they were in Essex, only a mile or so from St. Edmunds. The landing was even harder this time, and Remus had to bend forward to stop his head spinning. "Oh, again?" he grunted. "I'll do it." Mary took his hand and dragged him whirling through space once more. Next, they had arrived in an industrial estate somewhere, trucks and lorries parked outside a big warehouse, glowing under faint yellow street lamps. "Ah," Mary pressed her hand to her forehead, wincing. "Okay, again." The 4th time, they had to cling to each other to stop each other falling over. The 5th time, they landed on their backs, thankfully in a soft grassy field somewhere in the Lake District. Remus hauled himself up, his legs practically jelly, his head spinning. He pulled Mary up too, and she stumbled against him woozy. "I'm going to be sick," she said, then promptly turned around and threw up. Remus rubbed her back gently, blinking sweat out of his eyes. "You're doing so well," he choked. "Just once more." It was almost dawn when they got back to London, exhausted and queasy, heads throbbing. Mary stayed at their flat, saying she couldn't go to her mum's looking so rough. Sirius summoned Moody through the fireplace, and he arrived immediately, interrogating Remus and Mary, who sat shaking on the couch, wrapped in blankets and sipping tea. "Excellent work, you two," he nodded at them before leaving. "Keep it up, and you'll both make it through." Mary burst into tears. It was bad all round. Remus and Mary's narrow escape that night was not their last, nor were they the only ones to find themselves in a tight spot. Remus frequently had to leave the room while James and Sirius recounted their own misadventures, and Peter had developed a bit of a stammer whenever anyone mentioned Death Eaters. All told, the wedding felt like the only bright spot in their rapidly shortening futures. They'd certainly had their fill of funerals. So, in late August, when Remus and Sirius had an unexpected visit from Lily, who was in a state of panic, they immediately assumed the worst. "Oh, thank God you're here," she said, bursting into their living room. Her hair was in a messy ponytail, and she looked overtired and overworked. "What's the matter?" Remus stood up quickly. "Not you." She brushed him aside dismissively, then turned to Sirius. "I need you." "What's up?" Sirius looked just as puzzled as Remus. Lily never needed his help. "Is it Prongs?" "Yes, the bastard." The worry left Sirius's face, and he smirked. "Look, if this is about the stag do..." "Oh, I don't care what you lot get up to," she tutted impatiently. "This is much, much more important." "I'll put the kettle on then," Remus said, disappearing into the kitchen. He could still hear them through the wall. "So, what is it then?" Sirius was asking. "I can't dance." What? He scoffed. "I've seen you dance." "Yeah, I can shake my hips to pop music, but I'm talking about proper dancing, with steps, and James leading and counting 1, 2, 3, the whole shebang." Sirius was laughing now. It's going to be that sort of wedding. Brong's practically promised me that there would be modern music. There will be, Lily returned defensively. But, well, it's traditional to have a first dance, and I think his mum would like to see it. I agreed to do it ages ago. I thought, fine, we'll just stick on something soppy and sort of just, cling to each other for a few minutes. But that wanker just casually mentioned the fact that he's been ballroom dancing since he could walk. Sirius snorted. Yep, sounds about right. Look, Evans, you're the one bonkers enough to marry a pureblood. You've made your bed now. But you have to help me. Oh, no. Remus re-entered the room, balancing a tray with 3 mugs of tea. Go on, he said slyly. I'd love to see this. Absolutely not. Sirius folded his arms decisively. Get Pete to do it. He's a pureblood too. He's too short. Lily shook her head. And, well, I don't want to be mean, but he's very clumsy and I don't want him stepping on my feet while I'm breaking in my wedding shoes. They're white satin. Please, Sirius. I'm a fast learner, I swear. You just need to get me through one dance. Moony, Sirius pleaded as Remus sat beside him. Save me. I think you should do it, Remus replied, sipping his tea. For James. Yes, Lily nodded enthusiastically. For James. Oh, he doesn't deserve me, Sirius grumbled. Fine. 1 lesson. A waltz is easy enough. Moony, go away. Absolutely not. Remus sat down on the couch, settling in for the show. I've never seen you waltz before, and I'm not going to miss it. Sirius held up his middle finger, then tossed his head and turned to Lily. Right, he said haughtily. Give me your hands. As amusing as it first seemed, 15 minutes into the lesson, when Remus was completely entranced. Sirius worked hard to hide his pure-bloodedness most of the time. Ever since they were kids, Remus had been aware of Sirius mimicking his accent, and sometimes even his mannerisms, in an effort to seem less privileged. He slouched, he swore, he wore ripped jeans and leather jackets. But here was proof that Sirius Orion Black, heir to the most prestigious and ruthless magical house in Britain, had not completely forgotten his roots. At the time, Remus found it charming, as he found almost everything about Sirius charming. He held his head high, showing off his long white neck and regal jawline. He took Lily in his arms like a real gentleman, like a courtly prince. When he moved, he glided, not a step out of place. He was the picture of incorruptible nobility, and it drove Remus mad. Thank you so much, Lily gushed, rather pink-cheeked after 2 hours of dancing. I have to get back, or he'll wonder where I am. But I seriously owe you one, Black. Oh, just your firstborn will do. Sirius waved a hand gallantly, grinning. He looked like he'd enjoyed himself too. Lily grabbed her bag, kissed them both on the cheek, and left by the fireplace. Sirius turned to Remus, who was still watching him from the couch. He pulled a face. Go on then, take the piss. Never. Remus smirked, getting up and walking over to him. I love how fancy you are. He slung his arms over Sirius's shoulders and leaned in for a kiss. It went on for a long time, Sirius pressing against him, affectionately at first, but then with more eagerness as the kiss deepened. Since Remus had returned from the pack, things had been a bit dry in that department. Not that they'd been monks, exactly, but on the rare instances that neither of them were exhausted, sex had become pretty functional. Sirius grinned against Remus's lips, tilting his head back. Remus's hands were on Sirius's waist, and his thumbs found their way under the waistband of his jeans, stroking circles on his hip bones that made Sirius squirm. Remus grinned too, pulling back. Want to dance?
Tell my brother
3 days after the dancing lesson, Sirius and Remus found themselves with a miraculously free Sunday. There were no missions, there were no meetings, there were no wedding catastrophes to solve, and as far as Remus knew, neither of them were in mortal peril. So they spent it in the best way they could think of, sleeping. They had the longest lie-in since Hogwarts had finished, and it must have been almost 12 by the time Sirius got up to let the post owl in. It had been angrily pecking at their bedroom window for 15 minutes. The owl hooted indignantly, circled round the room, then dropped the Daily Prophet on Remus's legs, while Sirius rifled through the bedside table for a nut to give it. Remus rolled over, groaning. He considered covering his head with the duvet and just going back to sleep. "Shall I do breakfast?" Sirius asked, picking up the paper. "Breakfast in bed?" "Have I told you how much I love you?" Remus smiled, eyes squinting open. He stretched a bit, yawning. "I think we've run out of eggs, though, so—" "Remus!" Sirius grabbed his arm so hard he'd have bruises the next day. He shoved the paper in his face, and Remus, startled and half awake, blinked at the headline. "Black Air confirmed dead." Remus scratched his head, confused. "That's mental. You're not—" Then it hit him. He felt so stupid. He looked up at Sirius, who was white as a sheet, eyes wide and pained. "Oh," Remus said, helplessly reaching out. "Oh no, Sirius."